We all have a relationship with money. And that relationship, it's complicated. We like money, we need money, but money seems to have all the power. We need it to buy stuff. We need it to do things. Basically, we just need it in general. But here's the thing, no matter how much money we have, it never seems like enough. But there's a way to take back power from money, where it doesn't own us, and we own it.
Imagine losing a tooth right now. That seems like the worst. But when you were younger, it was different. Why? Because losing a tooth meant getting a visit from the tooth fairy, which was the best. It meant there would be cold, hard cash under your pillow in the morning. I don't know how much you got from the tooth fairy, but for me it was $1, and when I was a kid, $1 was huge. But there was this one time I lost a tooth and put it under my pillow, dreaming of the riches I'd wake up to. Instead, I woke up the next morning all excited, and the tooth was still there. When I told my mom about it, she said, "Oh, the tooth fairy must have forgotten, but I'm sure she'll remember tonight." So the next night, I put my tooth under my pillow, and when I woke, again, the tooth was still there. No money anywhere. Now I was frustrated. Again, I told my mom the tooth fairy was a no-show. She responded saying, "Oh, she must have had a lot of children to visit, but I'm sure she'll visit you tonight." I thought about it all day because, true confession here, I was mad at the tooth fairy. I was hurt that she'd forgotten, scared she might not come back. And on some level, I felt like she owed me, like I deserved my tooth money and she'd better come through. So on the third night, I put the tooth under my pillow and went to sleep, hoping the tooth fairy hadn't gone out of business. This time I woke up the next morning and there was a $20 bill under my pillow. Now that's what you call guilt money, and I loved it. I walked around like a tiny toothless gangster who had just been paid off. Money has a way of messing with our heads, doesn't it? Whether or not you have loads of cash, I'm guessing you have lots of feelings about money, or lots of moments in your day when it's on your mind. I mean, everything you do costs money. You need money if you want to join a school club, play a sport, see a movie, go on a date, wear normal clothes, have a phone, even go to some church events. So we're always thinking about money. And if you're like me, you're probably always thinking you'd be better off if you had just a little bit more. If your parents gave you a little bit more money for clothes, you wouldn't have to stress about what you're going to wear. If your babysitting job paid a little more, you'd be able to hang out with your friends or go on that school trip. If your family just had more money, you wouldn't have to work so hard to get scholarships. And when we think of money that way, it can make us miserable. It causes stress, and it isn't just us that's affected, is it? We've all felt the tension in our families when it comes to money. Maybe you felt that tension with your parents or step-parents. Maybe you've heard the hushed voices when you walk in the room about bills coming up, or maybe it's not so much hushed voices, but shouting matches and slamming doors. You've heard them be suspicious of each other and accuse each other about spending habits and complain about not making enough money. Or maybe your parents don't fight with each other, but they sure don't mind disagreeing with you about money. You say, "Hey mom, can I have some money to go to that new movie that everyone else is going to?" And she says, "Well, we don't have money for that right now." And you're like, "What? We can't afford to go see one movie? No, we just spent a ton of money to take you on vacation, and now your orthodontist appointment is coming up." Next thing you know, it feels like you get a guilt trip because of their money problems. And it seems unfair because you're a good son or you're a good daughter, and you're not asking for a lot. Or maybe you look at your friends' houses, the clothes they wear, the cars they drive, and the vacations they go on, and it seems like their lives are just better than yours. Regardless of the amount of money you have or don't have, we've all felt this way at some point in our lives. We've felt like we've been mistreated or believe we deserve more. Put simply, when it comes to money, we don't feel peace, we feel stressed. And the truth is, no matter how much money we have or don't have, we've all had the same thought. It shouldn't feel this way. Like somehow there's a way money is supposed to work where it makes your life better, not worse. It should cause less stress, not more. But whatever that feeling is supposed to be, we don't have it. The good news is, the Bible has a lot to say about money. In fact, money is one of the most discussed topics in the entire Bible, and it isn't talked about the way you might expect. Sometimes it's tempting to think the Bible only talks about giving away money, but that isn't true. It's full of conversations about how to spend money wisely, save, and even handle it when you don't have a lot. In fact, even if you aren't a Christian or don't believe in all this God stuff, I would say that you owe it to yourself to read the Bible just for the good advice it offers about money. Today, we're looking at a story Jesus told to help his audience understand something about God. And even though this story has a lot to do with how people treat each other, it also has a lot to say about how we think about money. In the book of Matthew, Jesus begins the story by talking about a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire some guys to do work for the day. The story starts this way. He agreed to pay them a denarius for the day and sent them into his vineyard. So the landowner sets up an agreement with this group of guys to pay them the usual amount for a day's work. These guys were going to receive a fair, respectable amount. Nobody was getting cheated. Other landowners may have tried to undercut them, but not this guy. He's a nice guy. So Jesus continues the story. About 9 in the morning, he went out and saw others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. He told them, "You also go and work in my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right." So they went. Now this landowner hired another group of people. Let's call them group 2. Verse 5 goes on to say that he went out again at noon and at 3 and did the same thing. So he hires 2 more groups, which we'll call groups 3 and 4. And next he says this. About 5 in the afternoon, he went out and found still others standing around, and he asked them, "Why have you been standing here all day long doing nothing?" "Because no one has hired us," they answered. And he said to them, "You also go and work in my vineyard." So at this point, the landowner has hired 5 different groups of people at 5 different times throughout the day. And the story continues. When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Call the workers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going on to the first." The workers who were hired about 5 in the afternoon came, and each received a denarius. So when those came who were hired first, they expected to receive more. But each one of them also received a denarius. When they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. "These who were hired last worked only 1 hour," they said, "and you have made them equal to us who have borne the burden of work in the heat of the day." So group 5, who's only been working for a few hours, gets paid a denarius, the same amount group 1 was paid, who worked all day. Not bad. But group 1 is pretty ticked off. They thought what you and I think so often when it comes to money. Not fair. That's how it felt, at least. At the beginning of the day, they agreed on how much they'd be paid. It was a fair wage, and they didn't expect any different. But now, what would have made them happy is making them angry. Not because the amount of their payment changed, but because their attitude toward the amount changed. Why? Because they began comparing what they earned to what everyone else earned. Suddenly, what they had didn't seem like enough. Instead of being happy and grateful, they were frustrated and miserable. And what we see in this story is still true today. Money has a way of messing with our heads and shifting our perspective from satisfaction to ingratitude. Now, it's easy to look at the story and think, what a bunch of ungrateful jerks. But what happened to these guys happens to a lot of us. We shift our focus from what we have onto what someone else has, and suddenly, what we have doesn't seem so great. Instead of being happy and thankful for the phone we have and the clothes we have, the vacations we take, the sports we participate in, or the ride we have to school, we feel like what we have isn't as good because we see what someone else has. And not only does this keep us from enjoying what we have, just like group 1 from Jesus' story, it can be tempting to believe I deserve more. And it can start to feel as though we've been treated unfairly. And nothing kills gratefulness more than a sense of unfairness. Instead of gratitude, we get an attitude. If you've ever thought that, you aren't alone. We've all been there, but it isn't healthy to stay there because our perspective on money reveals what's really going on. In fact, our perspective on money can really bring out the best and the worst in us. And the result is we'll either have gratitude or we'll have an attitude. We'll be thankful and happier people, or we'll live with a constant sense that we deserve more, that we're entitled to more. And the emotion money makes us have, either of gratitude or attitude, trickles into other areas because it isn't ever just about money. It's about what our feelings about money reveal about us. So what is money making you feel? Mad, entitled, or stressed? Or is money making you more thankful and generous? Because the truth is this, you have a choice. You can decide what your attitude will be and how money will affect you. It's up to you. In other words, when it comes to money, own your attitude. So how exactly do you own your attitude and take control of the way you think? Here are 2 ways I think you can get started. First, create a list of things you're grateful for. Gratitude has a way of changing our perspective from what we don't have to being thankful for all the good things we do have. Then actually go thank the person responsible. Thank your mom for buying you lunch. Thank your stepdad for putting gas in the car. Thank God for, well, pretty much everything. And the second way we can change our attitude about money is think about ways you can contribute. Think about something you want, then find a way you can contribute to your family. Even if you don't have a job or a way to make money, consider just taking some of the stress off your parents by choosing to not ask for the next thing you want, or at least choosing to not complain if they say no. Sometimes the greatest contribution you can make to your family is just committing to take some pressure off. Remember, you own your attitude when it comes to money. And when you do, not only will it make things better, you may just find yourself being happier as a result. So, as you head out today, I want you to think about your current attitude about money. Most of the time, do you find yourself full of gratitude for what you have, or do you often find yourself frustrated by what you don't? Figuring this out is a huge deal because here's the thing, money isn't going away. In a few years, you'll have more money and more reasons to think it's not enough. And as your bank account grows, either your gratitude or your entitlement will grow along with it. So it's important to decide whether you'll be a person whose life is made better because they're grateful, or a person who's frustrated because they feel they deserve more. You can decide, because when it comes to money, you own your attitude.